Hello, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand. Hey, regardless of what media I'm subscribing to these days, I hear the same old story. But you know, by hearing the same story, I'm also mindful of Adolf Hitler's propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels' statement. You remember it? It's tell a lie often enough and people believe that's to be true. So almost every day I'm told some form of story that, for example, race relations in New Zealand are at an all-time low. Over the past few months I've seen pictures, videos and reports of one ethnic group popping their eyes, beating their chest, even baring their buttocks and being quite vocal about their rights. Meanwhile, other ethnicities have featured in our news, some of it good, some not so good. But questions regarding immigration to this country are being asked, and honestly, from what I can see, we as a country, we have a major issue ensuring that we're letting them, those immigrants, come to a country where they feel they're being treated fairly. But first things first, it's not fair for the keyboard warriors who raise issues about migration to the country, who constantly bombard us with the mantra, look, if we let too many in, they'll take us over. Well, if you're feeling that way, maybe we need to look at ourselves. After all, are we not all from migrants? We have a large population of migrants who come from the UK and other English-speaking countries, but it's those who don't look like us. Is this what we're objecting to? We have many Asians, whether they're from the Orient or the East. They come with the same expectation as everyone, and that is to make New Zealand their home. But what is home? I know what it means to me, but I checked it out with my reliable source, Google, and this is how the question was answered. Home is a safe haven and a comfort zone. It's a place to live with our families and pets and enjoy with friends. It's a place to build memories as well as a way to build future wealth. It's a place where we can truly just be ourselves. But what is the concept of maybe just a house and a home? Well, the answer to that is the word house is used to talk about a building made for the people or a family to live in. The word home is used to talk about the family living in a house or the familiar space inside a person's house or the place someone was born or lived as a child. Now, going back to the term of home, and I'll quote Google again, but home is a safe place and it's a comfort zone. So if you were asked where's home, the answer would depend on where you are at the time. For example, if I was overseas, home would be New Zealand. If I was in New Zealand, well, it would be where I currently live. You get the picture. But migrants, they're another race who have chosen to make New Zealand home. Whereas me, personally, I'm a fifth generation Kiwi. This has always been my home. For others, their families may have been here, well, maybe a bit longer than that. Acts 17:26 tells us that God made from one man, every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth. Romans 10:13. Paul said there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. When someone comes to my home, they're usually invited, but sometimes, well, maybe they're not. They might be a stranger, but we always welcome them, and we're always polite. Now, because this video comes from a Christian base, I better mention the Bible talks about strangers sometimes being visited by angels of God. But to be fair, they probably weren't wanting to sell a new power or internet provider. Hey, but let's go back to the news. Race relations are at an all-time low. Do I agree with the statement? Hand on heart, let me just say there are some who want us to have issues, whether they be keyboard or chest-slapping warriors. We shouldn't be blind, though, to the issues that we face, but we also need to keep things in perspective and understand even when Jesus walked the earth here, well, there were racial issues. But remember this little gem from the book of Matthew 5 when he said we should love our neighbours? Now, I know some are harder to love than others, Australians particularly, but anyway. But Jesus followed on from love your neighbour to pray for your enemies. So good advice. He also gave us a new commandment in John 13 where he said that, we should love ourselves. And the question is, Well, how can we love ourselves but hate or discriminate about others? It saddens me when I hear the often quoted statement that our race relations in New Zealand are at an all-time low. I think we need to take time to look at how we're doing, how we're really doing as a nation. If our relations are at an all-time low, then the question we must face is it because we've failed to deal with past grievances on one part of our people, or is it prejudice that we have against another race? Let me give you an example. We all know that most food outlets, transportation workers, they're from the East. So what? They have the same advantages as we have, except we chose not to. Then there are those who bring migrants into the country after they've been expounded for as much capital gain for themselves and had them abandoned here. Are our race relations at an all-time low? When you look back at all the ethnicities in this country, ask yourself which ones are being taken advantage of. Which ones are more prosperous than others and why? Which ones are disadvantaged and really what are their barriers? Sometimes we just need to stop and look for ourselves. I was always told that the squeaky wheel will always get the oil. But what if it's your nature, your culture, where being a squeaky wheel is not what is acceptable and you just remain quiet? Remember, tell a lie often enough and people will believe it. Now, how many times have we heard race relations are at an all-time low? Look at who it is that makes up this country and calls it home. It's a place which is a safe haven and a comfort zone. To finish off, I want to leave you with this thought. Our children don't see race or colour until we as adults teach them the distinction. But when we do, is it from our own platform of prejudice? The Bible tells us we're all the same. We all have differing variances, even in our own families. But if we're going to teach our children, one of the most effective ways to fight racial bias in kids is not to only allow them to see colour, but to also deliberately show them more of it. Hopefully, regardless of who you are, where you've come from, what boat or waka your forefathers came to this country, we can all combine and make an effort to make this a nation that we're proud of and one that we can call home.